Hi friends, it's Julia. I'm here today to share my process for keeping up with the books that I read. I read a lot of books. My Goodreads goal this past year was over what my goal was not that many, but what I actually finished was over 300 books. I read fast. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, so it's all good. If you read 20 books a year or 10 books a year or 1 book a year, that's okay too. It doesn't matter how many you read. My thought process in today's video is not to boast or brag about how many books I read, but it's my process of keeping up with the books that I read. It's not that I reread a lot of books. I don't. This last year, I don't think I reread anything. But I like to see in the process of my lifetime what I've read. I've tried multiple times over the years to keep track of books as I've read them. Nothing has really worked for me. Nothing has panned out. Nothing has ever suited me like I wanted it to. So a couple of years ago, I joined Goodreads, and I keep track on there, and I do a pretty good job on Goodreads. I have several shelves on Goodreads. My to be read on Goodreads are books that I actually own. I only recently, like within the last couple of months, have started breaking things down on Goodreads about how many Kindle books I read and how many audiobooks I read and how many library books I read, how many ebooks I read. You get my drift. And so I like to see those numbers. It's the neurotic side of me. I know. It's the geeky part of me. So I'm good with that. You know, everybody likes to do their own thing, track their own things. And for me, that's what I like to track and that's what I like to know about myself. So last year I used this Miguel Ruiz. I've used it for the last couple of years. Keeping track with my monthly planning, keeping track of books that I read. I've changed things out multiple times in the book, and every time I reiterate something in my book, every time I try something different, either it works for me or it doesn't, or it's something that I've recognized I want to do something like this, but not necessarily in this way. And that's kind of where I'm at with my book tracking. In this format, in here, I have multiple pages. You can see all of these tabs up in the front part of the planner. Those are all books. So every time I flip back to one of these tabs, and you can see, and sometimes it's multiple pages of books that I've purchased. Granted, a lot of them are Kindle books. Sometimes, like this was a book buying binge. I went to a thrift store and I bought all of these physical books. All of these are Kindle books. Sometimes I buy the audiobooks along with them. You know, so it just varies on the format that I read in. But I like to keep track of it. I don't necessarily think I need to keep up with the cost of them per se. That's something that I was doing last year to kind of track to see how much money I spent on books. Realized it was way too much money, and I can't read as fast as I can buy. And so this year I have decided I'm going to cut back my book buying, the amount of money that I spend on books. So I'm not as concerned about how much money I'm necessarily spending on them. It's do I want to take the time to read them? If I bought the book today, would I spend some time reading it? And so what I've decided to do, and there's a couple of things in here about this book, about this method of tracking, because this tracks all the Kindle, the physical, and the audiobooks that I buy. And then I keep my library books on separate pages. And I have a little method on this as well to know that if I actually took the time to read the book, then I have a little dot here. If I didn't get to it, an arrow goes beside it that it returned back to the library. That way I kind of know that I didn't have time for this book, or I didn't want to read it right now. When it came up for me, from when my hold or whatever came up, I didn't necessarily want to read it at that point, and so I returned it back to the library. And so later on, I can go back and say, okay, how many times have I checked this book out or this book out? You know, and kind of look at it like that. have I checked it out multiple times and not read it? And have I checked it out once or twice and then read it? Was it a time factor or was it a loss of interest factor? If it's a loss of interest, I probably won't go back to it. But if it's a time issue, then I might go back to it. So that's one of the things that I keep up with there as far as the library books go. So I'm keeping up with a couple of things as far as books go. I keep up with my purchases, what I buy, and the order, the date that I buy them, and also the library books and the date that I check them out. Another thing in here that I keep up with are the books that I read every month. So every month I make a running list of books that I read. And so this was for the month of July. I didn't make a count on here anywhere, so I don't know per se how many are on here. I'm guessing at least probably about 20. So these are all the books that I read, and on here I keep up with, like here was the date that I started them, the book that I read, and how many pages, the author, and then the pages that were on them. And then when I go back over to my daily views, when I'm looking at my daily views, I go through here and I see I read 5 pages of this book. I didn't read any on those books on those days. Here I read 15 pages of that book, 25 pages of that book, 0 pages of that book, 0 pages of those books. Down here I read 102 pages of that book, 280 pages that day, 143 pages that day. So you see, I keep up with my daily pages. And so I'm doing things with that as well. I also keep a little tracker in here, a little graph for the number of pages that I've read. And you can see, I just go up through here and mark it off on there to keep up with the number of pages that I've read. So there you go. There's multiple things that I'm keeping track of throughout the month with my books. One of the things that I'm interested to track on these books, on the books that I read, are challenges. Every month I look for reading challenges on Goodreads or, different websites, blogs, that kind of thing. I like to do challenges, and it's not necessarily about reading the books in the time of the challenge. So like, these are all backlist books and then Goodread club books, book club books. Like on this one, this was a Tome Topple challenge that went from June 29th to July 12th. So it was a 2-week readathon, right? So there were all of these challenges. Read more than one, read a graphic novel bind up, read part of a series, buddy read, and adult to me. Whatever those challenges, whatever books that I choose to put with those challenges, I write them out there. Then as I read them during the month, I check them off. Okay? So in July, this is where this challenge was at in here. If I got to the 12th and there was not another challenge that I planned to do for the month, then I would go back and say, okay, I know it's past the challenge. Like this one, I started this one on the 18th of July. Well past the challenge date, but it's still a book that I wanted to read, so I came back to it. You see what I mean? So I may not read all of the books during the week or the 2-week period of the challenge, but I use it as a list to narrow my selection down, but I'm not stuck on it either. Like if I'm reading along and I start a book and I want to read the next book in the series and I own it or I can download it for free, I'm all over it. I'll go and I'll read that next book, and that's okay too. Whatever I feel like. So I kind of plan, but I'm also kind of a free reader. An emotional reader, a spontaneous reader, if you will. I like to have a list. I like to plan out what I want to read, but I also want to leave myself some freedom to go back and read some different ones. So in this book, because I was taking so much room up with other things that I was tracking and playing around with, I didn't necessarily put these challenges in there because I didn't want to take so much room up, pages and pages in here to keep up with these. And so what I've done is I've added sheets in every month. So in doing this, I've kind of bulked out my planner with having all of these pages in here every month. Let me pull that out. Every month I have pages, extra pages and pages of you know, book challenges that I'm using for my list. Like, I mean, there's pages and pages of books. That's Tome Infinity and Beyond. That's Emoji-a-thon and books that I read off those lists. So each month I'm doing this. So last summer I had purchased a new bullet journal because I knew this one would last me probably through the end of the year. I didn't know if it would quite last me through, but I mean quite literally this one lasted me through my last page of the book. So this went through December 31st. And so what I decided to do at that point, I had bought a new bullet journal last summer. And this is just a Michaels brand bullet journal, and I went through and I put a sticker on the front just to dress it up some. So what I decided to do was to keep my books separate, if that makes sense. I made a listing out of the library books, a library book page in here where I wanted to keep track of the library books that I wanted to read, right? When I checked them out and whether or not I've read them. And I've put the little legend down here, read and unread. Unread is the little arrow back, and then the dot is read. Same thing. Check out, title, author, and then when they're due back. So I decided to keep track of that. And then monthly, I thought, okay, I'm still going to keep up with the books that I read per month and the pages that I read per month. So I went through here and I plotted out all of these things that I wanted to keep track of in here. But then I thought, do I want to keep the running list? Because it's pretty hard to go back through when you have this many pages of books to go back through and find the ones where you want to mark them off. As I read the books, I went back through and I highlighted each month to say I read these books. And so you can see each month there's lots of highlighters on here. But if I read this book in December of 2018 and I bought it, you know, like if it's a really old book, it could be anywhere back in this journal. And so that's one of the things that kind of aggravated me about keeping up with that way. So I decided I wasn't going to keep lists of books as I bought them. And one of the processes that I came up with in doing that was to pull in this little journal to keep up with the books that I buy. And initially, I was going to keep all of my library books separately, and I'm still going to keep my library books separately because I like to count up how many books that I read from the library. Last year, it was 56 or 57. That I actually read from the library. Of the 300 plus that I read, you know, in the year's time, 50 plus of those books came from the library. I want to push myself to use the library more. And so that's one of the reasons I'm keeping the library tracker in this book, and I'm going to keep using it for that. But I've also decided I'm going to keep up with this journal, and it's going to keep my list of my books. And I've I have made a legend here. Kindle audio book, what the format is, whether it's Kindle Unlimited or Audible Romance or a library Kindle, a library audio, or a library book. The format that way. So when I turn it over here, you can see these are the books that I've bought or I've checked out from the library. Like I have one library book here. Okay, so I have Audible Romance books here. I was thinking there's a Kindle Unlimited book on here. I don't think I've put any of the Kindle. I think I just checked out a Kindle Unlimited, but I haven't put it on here. I think I actually checked it out yesterday, so it would have been on the 10th. So I haven't put that on here yet, but they'll be here. This is the date that I purchased them or received them, whether they're library or a short-term loan with Kindle Unlimited or Audible Romance. They'll be listed out here, the format. Then that's just a simple check mark. Have I read it? When did I start it? When did I finish it? And what star rating I gave it. So at the end of the year, I'm not thinking about, okay, am I going to transcribe these all over? How am I going to work this? I can continue on. If this lasts me to the end of the year, fine. If it lasts me for 5 years, fine. I've only marked it up through the middle of this book, so we'll see. I mean, I have plenty of pages here to keep up with. and I'm trying to cut down. So, you know, you can see of the books that I've purchased this year to date, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them are books that I've purchased, but I can tell you they've all been for free. I haven't paid for any of the books this year. They've all been on my BookBub, the daily email that I get. It sends me links to free books or books that are reduced price, and so that's where I've been buying them from, or getting them from, is the free ones off those lists. So that's what I've decided as far as tracking that. The other thing on here is I'm still keeping up with daily pages. Like here are the books that I read that day. I was keeping a list of all the unread books, or all the books that I have on my unread, from the ones that I have that date back months. Like this one I started last May, this one I started last May, this one I started last October, and this one in December. The rest of them are more recent, actually starting in this month. So there's 4 that have been carrying over every time. I was putting down all the books every day, even though I wasn't reading that first 4. And so as the days went by, I kind of dropped off and just put down the books that I'm reading that day, keeping up with the pages that I've read that day. And so, you know, before I was keeping a list up here in my bullet journal, my Miguel Ruiz, I was keeping a list in this area of all the books that I read weekly. And so it was a lot of redundancy when I have this ongoing list here to keep track of the books that I've read for the month. I'm not sure that I need to just have 1 page. I'm hoping 1 page is all I'm going to need for this. I have a couple of lines down here in case I run over, and I have these spaces at the bottom of these pages in case I need them to fill in more books. So I'm hoping this works for me. If not, I have a section here, and then at the end of the month I have also some sections back here if I need to utilize some more room. The other thing that I had done when I had gotten to the end of January, I had not found a way to keep track of my challenges in here. And so what I have since done is I have come in here and I have put in my challenges here. These are my Goodread book clubs. I have them listed here, which club it is and what books for that month. Okay, and then over here are the short-term challenges that I've joined in. This was for the New Year's readathon. These are the books that I chose. These are the books that I've read. This is an off-the-grid readathon, actual spending time on books and not spending time like on the computer or whatever. I've actually already read 2 of those today. One I read last night. It was a little short 64-page book, and then the other one was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I read today, this afternoon. Short book. This is for the biannual Bibliothon, and it runs January 12th to the 18th, and I can tell you I've already started 2 books on that. Both of them are available to me in audio format. No, this one's available in audio format, this one's available in Kindle format, and I'm reading them. You know, I've started them. And then I have the Buzzword Readathon that goes from the 14th to the 20th, and I haven't started anything off that list. And then I have a couple of monthly lists for month-long challenges. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to push myself to do every month, is to keep up with keep a monthly challenge ongoing. And so I've read a couple of books off of this first one, the Tome Infinity, and then I've read 1 book off of the January Jam Jar Challenge. So you can see I have some stuff. So my next thing is, if I continue in this, because guys, I'm not 100% certain I'm staying in this all year. Why, you ask? Well, because I bought a plum paper planner this year. And so this is it. I bought this planner for 2019, and I thought, okay, I'm going to keep up with all my stuff in here in one central location. I started filling everything in how I wanted it, went through and added washi tape, put in my monthly calendar, put in all the readathons, special dates, whatever, and started keeping track of things for this month, keeping track of my pages read in this format, and then towards the back, I've got here the full list of books that I've read for the month. Now, I haven't updated this in about a week. Well, the last several days. I haven't updated anything in here as far as continuing on with the reading of these books. There's more books to add down here that I haven't added yet. I was keeping up with my challenges here. My short challenges are here. My month-long is here. I have a book club here. This is a month-long, and these are book clubs, but it didn't incorporate the library books. The only place the library books are incorporated is here on this list as I read them. But there's no central location to keep up. So this smaller book can be utilized for both of these, either the bullet journal or the plum paper, to keep up with the ongoing list of books, but I don't have the library book page like I have in here. And that's something that I want to have because that's important to me. It's something that I want to see every day if I want to look at it every day, or at the end of the year if I want to have access to it. In here, there's no place to do it because I didn't add any extra notes pages into this book. Don't ask me why. I wasn't thinking. I just wasn't thinking. The other thing that I was thinking about when I did this planner was that I was going to do a separate journal for all of my book stuff. Like book challenges, monthly purchases, everything I was going to keep up with in here. Like my top 19 to read, a quarterly winter list of books that I want to read in the winter months, a reading challenge for the year, my monthly challenges. I had put down a TBR and then the challenges page separately, and then I came to realize that these are my books, but also I have additional books that I have picked up to read that aren't listed on here, so I need some place to keep up with those. This was going to be for an ongoing list of books, and I think this is just too much. I don't want to keep track of this, so I'm not going to utilize this. I can like glue it together. I've left my space here for a January book haul. Again, redundancy. I'm not going to use this page. This is a January revisit for last year. How many books did I buy? How many have I read of those books? Do I still have any physical books, or did I unhaul them? Because I'm pretty good about getting rid of the ones that, if they're like a 3 or below, or it's a series that I only have one book in and I have no interest in going back to it, I'm not going to keep them. You know, I'm going to get rid of them. And so I have that to track that there. And then I had a January backlist that I wanted to keep up with to try and encourage myself to continue reading off my backlist. I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to do any of this. I'm just not going to do any of this. I may still keep these lists going, only to shorten the number that I pull into my monthly challenges, if that makes sense. So when I'm looking at a monthly challenge and I get a challenge for, say they, like next month is the Enchantathon. If there's books, and I'm thinking like fairy books, fantasy books, something like that. If there's something on here or on here that would fit that list, then yeah, I might utilize these pages to pull that in. But am I going to keep track and then do this 2019 reading challenge? I might keep up with. But this is redundant. When I'm keeping track of it in there and I'm keeping track of it in there, this is redundant to have. The only bad thing about this one, or about the way that I keep it in the bullet journal and the plum paper, is I don't have the challenge titles, if you will, like what each book is for in the challenge. I know on the Tome Infinity, on the last round of Tome Infinity, I was on Venus. Okay, that's my planet. So now I have to set up a community on Venus. And so I chose my book for Venus, and then to set up your structure, your food, your water, everything, I chose a book to meet all the criteria, and that's Robinson Crusoe, because that book covers everything. Dude stranded on on an island. He has to come up with a way to establish shelter, establish food, all of that. So that one book met all those challenges. Then the next challenges in the next group would be setting up a community. And so all of these books were for different pieces of that. So I might utilize this portion to go through and list out what books are for what challenge, if you will. So then I watched a Nicole Jones 911. She was covering what her newest challenges are for the year. And can I say, holy wow, I want to do what she's doing. Only she has hers in like a small little notebook like this. Maybe it's a little bit bigger. Or maybe it is a journal like this. I don't, I don't know. I don't remember the size or the type of journal, but she was keeping up with, and she did all of these things like on separate pages, and it's like her 2019 goals, basically check boxes. To complete 208 books. That's my goal for the year, is to complete 208 books. To finish 15 series, and I have that many ongoing. To start 20 new series. And I've got plenty that I can start reading. So back here are where I'm keeping up with my series, my ongoing series. Okay? And I actually have started 2 new series. And I've highlighted the yellow dot and then the brown dot beside it. So I know those are series that I started in 2019 that I want to finish in 2019. Or just note that I've started them. To read 12 books greater than 500 pages. To read 12 new releases for 2019. Read 120 from the to be read list. And that's from my to be read list, like my backlist books. Anything before 2019 is what I'm considering for this one. To read 60 Kindle books and to read 60 actual books, physical books. Because I find audio really easy to read. I do read a lot on audio. I've left myself space in this area, this area, this area, and this area. So I might revamp it a little bit. Take some of the pages away that I have throughout. Like this, I can tape it together. Like those, I might tape together and do a separate page for this. Maybe instead of having a January backlist, I'll just start incorporating those into the quarterly winter or the quarterly spring or the quarterly summer or the quarterly fall books that I want to read. See what I mean? So I want to take out some of the redundancy. I finally narrowed it down. I had 3 different challenges that I was thinking about, and I finally chose one for the year, and it's the 2019 Reading Women Challenge. And so I went through here and I listed all the challenges, and I chose the books. I just have to put them in now. And I've penciled them on this to give myself encouragement to read from this list. I can still find books from other areas, and that's okay. But these are the challenges, and as I complete them, I will write them in. But I'm going to leave this in here with the penciled in books in case, I need something to fall back on. This one, these pages I'm going to change up. I'll still have my challenges here, but I'm going to have what each challenge is and what the book is for in each of the challenges. My Goodreads book clubs, excuse me, I don't think I necessarily have to do that. I think I'll be okay not doing that, but I just wanted to have it the other way around. This page I'm not going to keep up with, and like I said, this one I'm not going to keep up with, I don't think, because I'm taking care of that in this little book. And then my revisit, I may revamp that to some degree. These 2 pages, or this page and this page, I'm going to do away with and then do something different with that. And I love this. I know I'm a redundant person in a lot of these respects in keeping up with my books. The other thing that I always keep up with, that I started in 2018, is to have a master list, a physical master list of books that I've read. And this goes back, this goes back several years. I did not go into, I used to only read on my Kindle. I didn't have any physical books. I had some old favorites that I didn't want to get rid of. But as far as buying books, I only ever bought Kindle books. And I typically would only buy them one at a time. Read it, buy a new one. Read it, buy a new one. So I didn't go back through and add all the books that I've read on my Kindle over the years. I just initially, when I started this book in January of 2018, I went through and I wrote in all the books that I had not read yet. Why? I don't know. I should have put all the books that were on my Kindle, because I probably had 500 books that I've already read. And I could fill up pages and pages and pages of books for previous years when I first got my Kindle. So in this one, starting in like here in 2017, this goes 2017 here all the way through here, and then 2018 starts here. And so this was awesome. It kept up with my Kindle books, it kept up with my audio books, and it kept up with my physical books, but it did not keep up with my Audible romance books. It does not keep up with my Kindle Unlimited books, and it does not keep up with my library books. So when I got to the end of 2018, what I decided, I thought I needed to do was to add in my library books. So I did. I went back through, and all of these that are highlighted in blue are books that I've read. I chose a color for the year. Here's my little legend here. I chose blue for 2018. So everything highlighted in blue are books that I've read in 2018. And you can see, I've done a lot of reading from these pages. These are all the library books. This first little section is like 2017, where I was keeping track in my Miguel Ruiz. And then from here down to here and on to the next page are library books. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to transcribe these books into here, because when this is full and I'm no longer utilizing this can go in the trash. I'm okay with that, as long as I've transcribed everything into here. And this will be my ongoing record. So if this lasts me through the end of the year, fine. If it lasts me 5 years, fine. Same with this. This is going to last me 5 years. I can tell you that. I'm cutting down on the number of books that I'm buying, and I can tell you already, well, maybe if I can get to the start of, I went a little crazy book buying last year. This is what I utilized for 2018. So not that many pages, maybe 20 pages. And this has like, I don't know, 20 or 200 or 300 pages. I don't remember how many, but it's got a lot of pages in it. And I think it will last me for multiple years, probably 10 or 15 years. And then I can always start a new one. So this one can be disposable, right? If it lasts me a year, okay. If it lasts me 2 or 5, however long. But these books will all be transcribed into here, and I will keep track of them as my master list. So when I'm going through and choosing old backlist books, you know, I go to the first of this, where I started keeping track in here of my unread books. So I go here. So you can see last year I read from 2010 and 2014 and 2015, the start of 2015 through here, and 2016. So basically up through there I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 books off my backlist books. So that's not bad, you know, for a year of reading 13 books off a backlist that was like before 2017. So I just need to read more of these books to say they're done. I've read them. Do I want to continue with series if they're series? Yes or no. You know, if they're series and I want to continue with them, I can always put them on my series list in here. This list is ongoing. Some series that I was keeping up with in here, I had my series tracker here. Some of these series I finished off. Some of them I had started and then changed my mind about. I'm not going to complete the series. But a lot of these got transcribed right over into the new book. But there's several that did not make the cut to go into the new book. And that's okay too. I'm okay with that. And as I find new series to read, they'll go into here as well. Okay? So that's what I'm doing with my book tracking this year. So do you book track? How do you keep track? Do you just utilize Goodreads, or do you have multiple other ways, or just one other way of keeping track with your books? Do you keep spreadsheets on Excel like a lot of people do, or do you just keep a journal like I do of ongoing books? How do you keep up with the books that you read in your lifetime? Anywho, that's all I have to share today. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching my video, and I hope I inspired you to pick up a book or pick up a pen and a pencil and track your books. Anyway, thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.